Namaskar, I'm Professor Devdi Purkayastha from IIT Bombay, and I welcome you to my course, Business Fundamental for Entrepreneurs. This is a guest lecture by Mr. Ashok Balasubramanian, who is the founder and CEO of OpenWeaver, and who focuses on leveraging emerging technologies to further the digital space. He has supported clients across the world in North America, Europe, and Asia in their digital transformation initiatives. After his graduation, he did his MBA from IIM Bangalore, and he has served as a Global CTO of Atos. So with that, over to Mr. Ashok.
Welcome to the module. Glad to be sharing my experiences, insights with you all. Thanks to Professor Devdi, IIT Bombay and NPTEL for inviting me for this. We've got an exciting module ahead of us. So it's a pretty insightful and engaging topic. As we all say, the proof of the pudding is in eating. So if you look at this topic, there are two key parts to it. Starting with the bottom part of it that says rapid prototyping. Why rapid? Today's business world is fast. The sooner that you can create your idea, demonstrate to your user, get feedback, and improve your product. So rapid, extremely important. And the first half is even more important. It essentially says winning with customers. You create a product, and that product is successful if the customer is successful in solving his or her pain point. So extremely important for you to think of, can the customer win with your product? And that's why we coined this module as winning with customers through rapid prototyping. So very exciting topic. We look forward to share more insights with you. As we go into this, right, so as we think about rapid prototyping for winning with customers, what's important? How do you leverage? How do you go about it, right? There are multiple opportunities ahead of us, and the first opportunity is digital. So the way the industry has evolved, so if you look at it 3 decades ago or 2 decades ago, it used to be called as management information services. So there were computers, there was management, and then the job was getting some weekly reports, monthly reports to management. And then if you're lucky, you had something like an ATM or a stock trading, which was near real-time transactions. So that was about 2 decades or thereof, 3 decades ago. If you look at the past decade, we said this technology, information, is becoming key for everyone. So you could kind of take this information and its technology and give it to everyone. And then you look at last decade, we called it IT or information technology, where the information was available to everyone that executed operations. So all knowledge workers had IT and computers. So we looked at the era of something like an e-commerce, online trading, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the past decade, things have changed in a very big way. So look at it today, the way you're looking at this course fully online, the way you probably streamed the World Cup match, the way you probably bought your lunch today. Everything is online, everything is online, and you really cannot separate. Is Uber a business if there is no mobile? Is Zepto a business if there is no mobile? So you truly cannot, in this decade of what we coin as digital, you truly cannot separate what is the product and what is the technology from what a business is. So very important as we move into this era of rapid prototyping for winning with customers, for you to think digital first. And when you think digital first, it kind of gives us 3 large opportunities. First one is it deeply embeds the product or the experience with the customer, right? So typically, I think this is very subtle but very important. When you typically think of a prototype, you kind of say, bring the customer to the prototype and let them do something. But when you kind of think of it as a digital experience, you're already on the customer's phone, you're on their device, you're probably on their watch, and so on and so forth. So you're already deeply embedded in the customer's workflow. So you don't need to think of, how do I get a customer? How shall I have her try this? You're already in the customer. So first advantage of thinking of your digital prototype is to make sure that, you're able to be in the customer's workflow or daily activities in some sense. Second opportunity that it gives you is what is scale, because typically if you look at physical prototypes, you think of standalone prototypes which are not connected. They significantly limit the access to the physical market that you can reach. Think of it as a digital experience. It kind of opens the whole world as a marketplace to you. And in that scenario, even if your product is physical, even if you think it's a electric vehicle or some sort of a creatine chip that you're making, think of how you can create a user experience for the customer to say, can she check her creatine levels on her phone? Can she onboard? And based on those creatine levels, can it recommend diet for her? Can it kind of book a doctor appointment or the next dialysis appointment? So think of how you can gradually expand the boundaries of not thinking of it as an isolated physical experience, but more of a fully permeable digital experience. That kind of sets the tone that the whole world is your marketplace. So second important advantage is the whole world is your marketplace. And towards the end, I think we'll go through some demos and see how you can leverage digital marketing to kind of get to the whole world as your marketplace. So third part of it, again, you could look at it as significant disruptions, but where we are startups, right? So disruption is an opportunity, right? So wherever there's a disruption, that is an opportunity for you to change the game. And the disruption of the decade is, of course, generative AI. There are infinite opportunities opening up in generative AI across, anything from claims processing to a digital scribe for a healthcare, all the way to citizen services. From a government perspective, where complex documents can be explained to users. So there are infinite opportunities across each vertical, each micro vertical, that ensures that there is significant opportunity for you to change the way the world works. So digital, again, embracing digital. Like I said, a creatine chip is a physical product. But if you think of it that there is a dialysis mentor sitting on the phone talking to the chip, which is using generative AI to say, hey, if you are a strictly vegetarian, what should you be eating based on your creatine levels today morning? That kind of increases the stickiness of your product with that customer and can significantly make you successful. So three amazing things on why you should think digital first when kind of we go through rapid prototyping to win with customers. So those are aspects on how you could go about doing things. One other critical aspect, I think, of what you could think differently, and this is based on significant experience, having worked in technology and technology products over the last 25 odd years. Typically in a legacy world, we go and we kind of ask the customer saying, hey, I think you have this problem. If I do A, will it solve it for you? If I do B, will it solve it for you? If I do C, will it solve it for you? So those are things that typically happen when you kind of talk to a customer and kind of do some sort of a soft research that says, hey, would these things help you? But there are two inherent challenges there. A lot of us come from engineering background, idea background. Our communication may not be the best. So what essentially happens is we may not be able to paint that magic to the customer on what he or she is actually going to get. So one, that communication gap of what they're going to get could distort their feedback. So they may infer that you are maybe giving some idea A, B, C, versus for them they might have thought it's something else, and then they could give you feedback based on what they think. So that's one distortion. Second, I think the other biggest mistake that we entrepreneurs do is we talk to people whom we know. So that's the other mistake, right? So you may get a soft feedback. Someone says, okay, let me not spoil his enthusiasm. Let's say, okay, this may look good, and something works and it may work. And of all people, right? I think Steve Jobs summarized it well. Customer does not know what he wants unless you give them something, so that's a critical part of it. And again, that's where the prototyping becomes critical. But even in that concept of prototyping, don't separate the prototype and the customer. Don't say, hey, customer, you are here, and my prototype has feature A, feature B, feature C. Look at it and tell me what to do, is where things can go wrong. What you could do, again, I think these are advantages of digital. What you could do based on digital is this concept called minimum viable product. What it essentially says, build your prototype to a functioning level. So if you thought of prototype as something that is just clickable, navigable, but does not do something, bring features into it that does something, that does the bare minimum that the customer needs to solve her problem, and give it to the customer, right? So instead of saying, hey customer, this is what I have, can you look at it and tell me? We're doing two things, right? One, we're actually building a product which is as small as possible. And instead of showing it to them, we're giving it to them. And since we have thought digital now, you don't need any special interface to give it to them. You're going to maybe deploy it in their phone, deploy it in their web browser, or so on and so forth. So it's so easy. So now it becomes more of an observability for us rather than an interview. Now you let the customer use your minimum viable product, and you can get feedback from them digitally. You can observe them digitally to see what they're doing. And are they able to, solve the problem that you intended this product or the service to do? You can watch it. So extremely, again, a very soft separation, but extremely important. So we're essentially saying prototype, absolutely important. Add core functionality to prototype. And instead of demonstrating it to customer, give it to the customer to use it. Let the customer use it to solve the problem. And since we're deploying digitally, you can deploy it into the customer's workflow and get feedback, both direct as well as observable feedback on how she is able to solve the problem. So extremely useful concept called minimum viable product in the digital age of how you could rapidly prototype something that is significantly testable. Now if you look at the MVP approach, what is important here, right? So important is for us to understand what the problem is. And of course, as entrepreneurs, we set out to solve a problem, but sometimes, we get carried away by 4 or 5 new ideas that may come in. So strip the idea to the barest minimum form to say, hey, this is the core idea, and then look at, what is the core persona of the user, who is the user? Because again, if you think about it in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, of course, you might have a unicorn idea where you'll have millions of users. Of course, that's there. But today, this week, next 4 weeks, who would you want to test that core idea with? So that's again a very important part of how you would go about it. Then the third part that comes in is, because we don't want to take too long, right? So we said we want to give something that is functional into the hands of the user, into the digital device of the user. You want to try it. We absolutely cannot afford in this digital world to take 2 months, 3 months, 6 months to get that feedback. We need that feedback in 1 week, 2 weeks, or whatever time that short as possible. So think about it in weeks and not in terms of months. Or of course, very long, it kind of loses the flavor, and the world changes fastly. And last important point is don't fall in love with the solution. So whatever you created as a solution or a minimum viable product, don't love it. Let's say we thought of a problem that the customer faces or a market opportunity that exists today, and we kind of came up with a solution. That solution is just one way of addressing the problem. So of course, I think some may work, some may not work, but feel free that it may not work and you'll be ready to throw it away. So this is a great concept, right? So now if we think of it and say, hey, let's put some boundaries around it. Let's take maybe an example. And since we said digital and there's so much changing in generative AI, I worked with a few startups who came up with some similar idea. So you may know an Etsy or an Artsy. So these are all large online marketplaces focusing on handmade art and craft. So they essentially bring together lakhs of artists who will kind of have maybe some pottery, some art, some drawing, some painting that you can buy online. So group of young folks who were kind of into arts essentially said, hey, we have an amazing idea. We looked at it. We want to reinvent in some sort of a modern art perspective. But we do not have the funding and we do not have the time to build like a marketplace of maybe few lakh artists who will be kind of showcasing their painting. So then they ideated and said, hey, let's use generative AI because AI can today paint and draw, right? So think about it. Many years ago we said the bots will do menial tasks and humans will do imaginative. This past year has actually shown that bots can actually do a lot of the imaginative. It writes poems, it draws. So this team kind of got, founding team got excited and said, hey, let's disrupt this market. Let's bring in a concept like what McD did, right? So McD said, this is fast customization. So there are pre-built blocks, but you can build your own burger. But it is not a fine dine restaurant where everything is cooked from scratch. So there they clearly set out the problem that said there is a one-end high-end art collector market, which will really look at named artists, excellent paintings which are in tens or lakhs of rupees or even much more, crores of rupees. Then there is your bottom of the pyramid where you already have pre-printed maybe a few hundred to maybe a few thousand rupees where you have pre-printed card stock available that you can use as art. In between they said, hey, let's create a market where the user can describe something and then it solves a problem. So very clear clarity that said, hey, we're going after a market which is willing to pay maybe a few thousand rupees for art. Something that they feel that is a part of what they created and something that is customized to their taste, but may not have the wherewithal to commission a real human artist to paint. So very good clarity in terms of saying what you're trying to solve, what is that part that you're trying to solve, and who is that customer who is going to be your test customer for that point of time. So now even if you have that clarity that says, hey, here is a set of customers who are going to benefit from that amazing idea that you have, as entrepreneurs we again get carried away, say, hey, beautiful, I have generative AI. I looked up generative AI. Generative AI can do image to image, text to image, voice to image, video to image, idea to image. It can do so many things. I spoke to 50 different people, they said XYZ, someone wants it in this style, someone wants a black and white frame, someone wants a wooden frame, someone wants a canvas. So we all get super excited, right? And of course, as startups, that enthusiasm is what keeps us going. So nothing wrong with it, but time, right? So as startups, we kind of fail in two things, right? So one is not addressing that market fit quickly. And then, of course, if you don't do it in the right time, you run out of funding. So this whole part of actually winning with customers with rapid prototyping will solve both. In very less funding, you can create a minimum viable product. And by giving that minimum viable product to the smallest customer segment, you will test your market fit very easily. So again, it becomes critical for us to create that most robust prototype in a rapid manner. It is extremely important for us to prioritize features. So we cannot go back and say, there are infinite features that will come out and that may take months to build. So think about what is absolutely the user's need. So here, our example, where we said there is a generative art and maybe let's call it me Picasso. Maybe I want to be like Picasso is what we're telling the users that, you are as good as Picasso. So let's say, this me Picasso that's there, it has to test that need, right? And what is that need? The most basic need we're saying is users are willing to pay, right? So willingness to pay is absolutely critical, right? So you want someone to pay for it. And what is it that we want them to pay for? We want them to pay for an art that is generated based on the user's idea, right? So very simple. So if you think of that as the core idea, and then we call, there is a beautiful concept in minimum viable product called needs met criteria. So we're essentially saying create a prototype that is functional, that will make sure that these needs are met. That needs are just twofold. One, user is willing to pay, and two, user is willing to pay for some art that is generated based on what the user told to be. Then beyond that, you will have many ideas. You will say maybe the user will sign on it, or maybe the user will see one picture and then draw something according to it, or maybe the user will speak, maybe the user will sing. All those things will come later. So important part of prioritizing features is the time scale. Of course, in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, everything is important. But think about what is important in the next 2 weeks to actually show that criteria that says customer is willing to pay for an art that is generated. So that's a very critical way to think about it. And we wouldn't go through it in detail here. I would recommend you to kind of look it up. So there are two beautiful structured models. One is called the Moscow matrix, and second is called the Kano model. Both are fairly similar. I brought both because they bring slightly different flavors. Moscow is very clinical in the way it addresses. It says, hey, here is a must-have, should have, good to have kind of. So it gives you that priority of what is absolutely essential, and then you will get a very clinical analysis to say I had 50 features at this point of time. These are the 3 features that are essential for a customer to absolutely try that core needs met criteria. So that's one way to look at it, and that's absolutely correct. But what we also found useful in the Kano model is it takes one step further. It says absolutely do what Moscow said. I think go after the big blocks, go after the important ones at this point of time. But since these are digital, look at what can create user excitement, right? We want the user to be happy. If the user is happy, one, they should absolutely solve their problem. But can you make them excited about solving the problem? Because there are 2 ways, right? You could take them through a very methodical way to solve the problem. Of course, the problem will be solved. It will be a transactional success. But if you can give them a little bit of joy that says, hey, my prototype, also make them sit back and say, wow, right? So think of our example. Our example says, me, Picasso says, the user is going to be an artist. So can you motivate them? Can you tell them saying, hey, you are now like a world-renowned artist? They feel happy about it. Maybe can you do 2 steps further? One, maybe can they share it on Instagram, whatever they painted on Instagram, so that their friends will say, wow, you are a great artist. And it also gives you advocacy, right? Because if your first users share it on Instagram and said, hey, I built it on mepicasso.com, that is going to be free advertisement and free word of mouth for you. So think of points of joy for the customer where she or he not just solves their problem, but also feels good about solving it and feels good telling someone else that their problem was solved with your prototype. So about 90-95% spend on the logical grouping. Spend 5 to 10% in kind of seeing if you can bring those features that will bring joy or excitement or stickiness to that user. So, and last important one, of course, customers are our best teachers. We learn from customers, but don't shy, learning from competition. I think what worked well for them, get inspired by it. What didn't work so well for them, of course, you can plan ahead. You don't need to repeat the same mistake. You can plan ahead and fix things from there. So while you focus on needs met, so this again becomes critical, right? So think about it. We talked on the previous section on how do you go through it. You could use a Moscow model or a Kano model to go through and pick your needs met. This is another view that kind of pictorially represents, and this is where some of us go wrong. I come from an engineering background. I get happy that says, hey, this product is built on this cloud technology. It can scale to millions of users. It uses some llama model of generation, so on and so forth. Right? Well, who cares? The customer doesn't care, or it doesn't directly impact the customer's outcome. Right? So don't think of needs met or your minimum viable product as features that you're using to build the product. So let's say, for example, if you're going to use OpenWeaver Studio to build the product, that is not something that you should tell your customer. Right? You can't tell your customer, I use this technology, so please use my product. I don't think they will find use in that. But if you tell them, hey, you can be an artist using this, it solves the need of you being an artist, and it solves the need of you exhibiting it. Maybe you can print it and ship it to your home, or you can share on Instagram, you're able to exhibit it. So needs met criteria are focused primarily on features or experiences that solve the customer's problem and are not based on internal features of a product. So again, think through very deeply here. Many of us go wrong there by spending too much time on how to build something versus what addresses the customer's problem. You can of course build a platform that will scale to lakhs of users maybe in 3 months, 6 months. But if you want to test that idea that says if someone is willing to pay for an art that is generated, use the shortest possible path to get there and focus on those two needs. Is someone willing to pay? Is someone willing to draw something through generative AI? And don't spend too much time to say my UI has this jazzy features, I can drag, drop, do this, do that, my cloud is so secure. It doesn't matter in this state. Once you become scalable, once you become super successful, a lot of things will make sense. But using the principle we said, right? Startups, very important, market fit and time and money, right? So you want to get market fit with the shortest time and the shortest or smallest budget possible. So these two will kind of, make us stay true to, can I build something quick, which will focus on needs met criteria for my user. And you don't need to be too shy about it, right? Because we all say, hey, no, I have such a big idea, and unless I build all these things, my customer will, just throw my idea away. No, it is not. And that's where, like we said, look at competition, look at mentors. And mentor doesn't need to be your mentor in an incubator or someone whom you're talking to every day. Mentors can be, of course, industry leaders. So look at what the largest of largest providers and digital leaders did. So if you look at Airbnb, their minimum viable product just tested one thing, which said, are people willing to share maybe some part of their home, and is some customer willing to pay for it? Very simple. Website, very simple listing, does not do payment, does not have maps, users transact separately, and it started with just airbeds for events, which means there is an event that is happening, let's say in Mumbai today, and if I have a spare bedroom, I inflate an airbed and I say this is maybe 1,000 rupees for a night, and then someone does it. So super simple, right? We could have think of it, you would have gone all over the place trying to create an amazing website which does so many things. Not required. So think of minimum viable product and that rapid prototype to say, is customer willing to pay for a shared accommodation? Nothing else, Next, fintech, our darling Stripe from fintech, one of the biggest inline payments that is there, and most of us startups that want worldwide payments use Stripe, so successful. But if you look at their first product or even their minimum viable product that came out, fully manual. Except it kind of showed them saying, hey, there is a product that is available. Once you sign up, someone manually onboards you, does the manual integration, and then you're on your own. But it just tested saying that there are customers who are willing to pay for alternative inline payments to what typical merchant model that existed at that point of time. So very simple, right? The third one of the most customer-centric organizations in the world, Zappos, So at that point in time when people bought books and then Amazon said, hey, you can also buy electronics online, they came out and said, hey, why can't people buy something like shoes? And that time the concept was things like shoes and apparel are things that you need to touch, feel, fit, look, feel, all those needs to be there. So people will not buy. So their minimum viable product was very simple, a simple website that listed shoes Then someone places an order, someone in the back end actually runs to a store, buys the shoe and ships it to you, and then you pay for it. So super simple, but what did it do? The needs met criteria that essentially said someone is going to pay and buy something that is experiential like a shoe online. So it tested that part of it. So extremely important for you to crystallize your prototype to the smallest factor, which makes sure that the user is successful, or your hypothesis of how the user is successful is met very well. Because that will make sure that if you crystallize it so small, we'll be able to launch it in days and weeks and not months, which is critical for any startup to succeed. And of course, I think while we talked about, we'll do it digital, we're going to use generative AI, what becomes critical is, digital has also come along with it. So Zappos, Stripe, these were like 5 years, 8 years back when they were much smaller. But the concept of minimum viable product is still today true, right? So for example, this World Cup, I was looking to order, T-shirts for me and my friends on Zepto, because the World Cup match has started and we wanted the fan T-shirt. Some of us didn't have it. So we said, hey, let's look for a large, medium, this size, that size. And if you look at it, each one is a different product. Small is a product, medium is a product, large is a product. If I had thought of it as an engineer, I would have said, hey, it has to be one product, this style has to be a part of it, a size has to be part of it, then men, women, unisex has to be part of it. I would have imagined and created a very complex solution to it. But think about it, such an amazing leader in quick commerce, they said, hey, no problem, customer wants a shirt, give them 3 options, they will buy. You don't need to complicate it so much by, bringing in 10 options into that buying procedure. So even if it's not, a little bit, few years older like Stripe, even today you will see minimum viable product in action in every part of what you do. Another example from this great product Zepto, right? So others said, you need to track, you can see the motorcycle coming, next to your street and all. But you go to Zepto, they say, hey, it's Bumrah speed, that's all it is. You place your order, they don't expect you to see where the bike is, but they say it comes fast, it comes fast. So you can always, you don't need to go to the nth feature level. You can always look at it to say, how can you optimize and build with the minimum features. But what good thing that is available in digital today is the ability to build an app is much more easier. And that's what we'll see in the demo as well, of how we can actually easily build a product using OpenWeaver Studio. But even when you build, even if the product allows you to build something easy, there are some critical considerations for you. You really need to think through in terms of, the whole user experience. Essentially they say a human's attention span is, anywhere between a few seconds to about 7 seconds, right? So in that 7 seconds, you have to kind of, get the user to say, okay, I looked at it. Okay, I think I may find it useful. And then that 7 seconds, if they like what they see, maybe they will invest maybe 60 seconds with you. And then if they see something good in that 60 seconds, maybe they will invest 20 minutes on your product. So that idea that, that user experience, that customer journey, that message structure and call to action, which essentially says you can't tell the customer I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G at one shot. They'll say, it's too complicated, I don't have time. But if you say, hey, I have A and B, which is most important, they say, wow, let me see. Then you say, by the way, there is C, D, and E. And then once they get invested into it, tell them there is X, Y, Z also. So take steps, that's extremely important in that message structure and call to action. And then supporting things, right? I think being digital today, you can reach a larger scale. Softer things in terms of, your brand elements. If you choose a color, do you associate with the color? Do you associate with a certain imagery? Hierarchy. All these messages cannot be at one level. So you can say this is message 1. Okay, if you got it, here is message 2, then here is message 3. Extremely important. And we'll kind of look at this in a quick demo of how we could build this product. Our prototype, what we said is Me Picasso, which is going to be a generative product, which customers will buy, their custom art out of. using a design first no code tool from OpenWeaver Studio. So we said we'll create our rapid prototyping for our idea, right? So Me Picasso, which is a generative art product that users are going to use to build their own custom art and buy it online, right? So part of the course, you can sign up for your free trial at studio.openweaver.com. So you go ahead and create new, which means let's say we create our product. So you get a cool interface where you can kind of create your product. And what did we say? We said you need to look at form factor, you need to look at design elements, and so on and so forth. So most of the digital technology, and the only reason that we started OpenWeaver was to make sure that things are easy for people to build. These support all form factors are native, so you don't need to worry about do I build it for a mobile, do I build it for a web application, and so on and so forth. So it becomes kind of easy for you to build any product that works on all form factors. So to some degree, we definitely want to brand, right? So we want to say, hey, this is my product. So you will kind of put a header that says, this is what my company is, and so on and so forth. You can generate your logo also, and we'll come to it. We'll talk about it when we go to the generative AI part of it. A lot of tools today, will help you build your logo online as well. And what do we want to do in this product? We want to call this as maybe our home page. So the first page for Me Picasso is our home page. And in this page, we want to keep it simple. We don't want to confuse the users with too many things. So let's take out, for the prototype, maybe we don't need the user to sign up. We don't need the user to sign in and all that stuff. So let's get rid of whatever is not critical. Maybe we don't have a product also. We just have a service called the generative. So let's say that's a service. Then what do we want to do? We said we want to kind of excite the user. We want to show them something that says, I'm excited about what is here. So that concept is called as a hero section in a product. It's called a hero or a welcome message that essentially sets the mood for the user, right? So you can drag, drop, and put in a hero section that says, what is it that you want to communicate about your product to the user, right? So you say, so we're essentially, motivating the user. We're saying, hey, you can be a Picasso as well, because we said, hey, there is only 7 seconds, and in that 7 seconds, of course, you will have better ideas than me. But think about what is that first call to action. You're saying, hey, we are going to bring out the Picasso in you, and then maybe you can explain it a little bit. Some people may not understand it fully, so you could kind of explain it by saying. Let's say you can imagine it's a new keyboard, so I'm kind of, it's taking a bit of trials. Imagine, paint, showcase. So we're essentially saying the user, saying, hey, you imagine and it paints, and you can showcase it. So we're actually telling them a little bit, because if you don't understand it very clearly, you're telling them you can do that also. Maybe at this point of time, maybe if you have a demo, you can show a demo, or let's say we want the user to try, right? Because in digital, in 7 seconds, you're telling, hey, you can bring out the Picasso in you, and why don't you try it? Because trying is what we want people to do in the prototype. So let's say, we call this as try now. And like we talked earlier, you can, of course, if you have any brand elements, if you feel, purple is your color, you can copy this and then, define custom themes where you can define your color models, your color palettes, your fonts, because sometimes, I think people respond to some of these implicit things pretty well too. So then maybe what? Let's say you're on the page and then we're telling the user saying you can do it, right? But not all users respond to it, right? So this is your happiest path where you're telling the user saying you can try generative art, but maybe some users like to scroll. They like to see, okay, what does it mean, right? What would it look like? So maybe there you can show some proof, right? You can maybe show some things. You can say, some samples that says trending art. So you're saying, hey, there is trending art from this week, which essentially tells them that, someone has built something, someone has painted something like this to you. Of course, you can change these pictures based on what people will do. You can say, from amazing. So that way, again, you're reinforcing. You're telling, hey, these are people like you. These are not, Picasso or, some famous painter. These have been painted by painters like you. So again, look at the message hierarchy. We kind of put in a header to kind of say, hey, what is the brand about, so that people know that there is a company called Me Picasso, and so on and so forth. Then you directly get to the message. You're saying you're meeting that need that makes everyone an artist, and they can try it immediately. And of course, softer things. You're actually showing them some examples that says, how you can paint. And this is almost there, right? I think it's almost there for most people, but some people may say, okay, I may not want to paint right now. Maybe later, I like the idea, but I'm not going to do it now. Maybe you give them some sort of a subscription that says, you could sign up now and kind of watch it. So maybe if you wanted to paint today, but you didn't have time, or you kind of didn't understand it well, you need to go somewhere. You can join a mailing list. So if you look at it, we created the first slice of what we call the prototype, maybe the marketing version of prototype. You can hit preview at any point of time, and if you hit deploy, it goes live. So if you hit preview, it kind of shows your application on what it is. So this is available to you. It's available to you can share it with all of your users as well. And it is fully responsive, which means users can look at it on their phone, users can look at it on any device that they want. It kind of works on all form factors that the users may end up using. And what it does right now, it says here is a product, here is what you can do, here are some examples, and at this point of time, if you just want to keep in touch, subscribe, right? So 3 simple things it does. But we still need to do our important thing, right? Our important thing is seeing if the user can paint using generative AI, and if the user will buy it from you, right? So those are what we call as a needs met criteria. So right now we have created the connection with the user saying, hey, why should you try this product? Now we will create that step where they can try the product. So since we created a common header, I can just duplicate this page. It will create a copy of the page. And let's call this page, on what the user will do. Let's call it paint. So this is where the user will paint. So for painting, we don't need this section. We don't need the user to, kind of go through the hero section. We don't need this. We don't need subscribe, because the user is going to paint here, right? So the user is going to paint that generative image that they want. Here you can select if you want something small, if you want to create a low fidelity prototype, you can select from here. But let's say we want the user to directly get into the product and paint. Let me pick a generative AI template for image generation. So this is something that will help them paint, right? So it tells them saying, hey, if you type something here, that picture will come here. So this again is at that static prototype level. There is text, there is input, but nothing will happen so far. And then what do we want to do? We maybe want to kind of make sure that the user is able to kind of also buy it, right? We said two things: the user has to paint and the user has to buy. So maybe we'll create a very simple experience for the user to buy. Maybe we'll take an order form and tell the user to buy it from us, right? So it says, hey, this is the painting, you can buy from us. So again, still at a static prototype level. So if you preview this page, it essentially says, hey, there is Me Picasso, it has services, and they have something to generate an art, and you can buy. But the customer cannot use it right now. It still is at that prototype, customer model. You kind of show it to them, and they cannot buy right now. But they can, of course, give you comments that says, hey, I didn't understand this. I wanted something else on second page, and so on and so forth. So now let's make it a navigational prototype. So right now, if you look at it, these are like static pictures. You could have drawn it on hand. You could have drawn it on PowerPoint, on Canva. We drew it on OpenWeaver. Now let's make it clickable, right? So we want to connect the flow. So let's say when you click on services, we want to connect it to the next page, right? So we want it to go to the page called Paint, and it opens in the same tab. Maybe when the user clicks on Try Now, we want to do the same thing. On click of the button, we want to go to that page. So on click of the button, we're saying, hey, user, navigate to page and go to Paint. And then in Paint, let's say user clicks on Home, you want them to come to Home, right? So this is done. So now if you, maybe let me get excited and deploy it, right? So let's say I want to deploy it. So this URL is globally available. So if you kind of create, and if you're trying it at home, you hit this URL, you'll be able to see this application. So now I click on services, it takes me to this service, and I have a full prototype where I can say, generate, I can submit, I can buy, or I want to go home. I can do all these things, right? But still it is what we call as a static prototype. I think on home we said same tab, okay. So now the flow is there. The users can, kind of go through it. Users can navigate, understand what your product does, come back, look at what others did, joining your mailing list, so on and so forth. Now we need to add the magic behind it, right? So we want to make sure, because this is what we said is okay, it's a great first step. You created an amazing prototype for something that is going to reinvent a market like HC or Artsy in a very large way, but it is still what I call as a navigable prototype or a interactive prototype. Let's take it to a minimum viable product in next few minutes so that the user can use it and maybe even buy from it, right? So what do we need to do that, right? We need the generative technology for that, right? So what is there? We said we want to add something called user gives a text and you want to create an image. So let's add something called as a text to image, and what the no-code platform does, it makes it so easy. So instead of having to engineer for months together to add generative AI to your application, we just hit plus, it gets added. And you can do some magic with it, right? So we said, hey, we wanted to create a logo because we didn't have a logo. I wouldn't digress too much, but I just wanted to show for your startup, you can, your prototype idea, you can do that. You can say create a square logo. So you can say something like this, and it generates for you, and you can save the image. And of course, I think traditional transactional systems are faster. Once you generate, it has to go back. So it's created a beautiful logo for you. You can actually save this logo and then use it, in that page header. So this can become, your startup logo. You can tell it to do anything. You can say, put the text in it for me, do something for me. It'll do all those for you, and you can create. But that's not the fun. Let's focus on the user's need met, right? We're not focusing on our vanity of what our logo looks like. So let's say we added this resource, and this resource is going to be used by the user, and the user is going to paint something for herself and buy it off you. So we need to create some logic, right? So when the user wants to paint something, we create a logic that says, let's call this image gen flow. So this flow is what is going to trigger, which is going to do that back-end magic that is going to create that image for you. To create the image, what do we need? We just need one simple technology called text to image. Anyway, we added it in the resource. Like all easy technology, you can just drag and drop, and it comes to your screen. So we're saying once the user starts, we need to generate an image and using the text that the user inputted, and you're done. You give it back to the user, and then she will buy it in that order form that we created. So first simple step, we are saying, hey, which page we want it from? We want it from the page called paint. In that page called paint, she is going to enter the input. And the moment you select I want page called paint, it gives you what all is there. These are from the order, the delivery address. We don't need delivery address for generating the image. Maybe once you want to kind of get to the order, you can use the delivery address. But let's keep it simple. We can delete whatever is not required. So we'll just use the text input that the user gave. The prompt input 54, which is what the user is going to type, saying, hey, this is the picture that I want. So you have that picture, and then you just need to pass it to the text to image. We're saying, I want to do text to image, and the data is coming from the page input called input 54. And of course, as you do it in a slightly longer, you spend 2-3 hours, you can actually give right names to it, so it is easy for you. For want of time, I'm just using the default names that are there. You're saying that is the input, and output automatically comes. You don't need to do anything. And then at the end, what do you want? You want that output. So you took the user's input 54, you sent it to the algorithm that generates the picture, and then you need to send it back to the user. So at end, you're going to say, I need a global variable. That image that the user created from this action called text to image should be available to me at the end. So that's all. So now the logic has created that back end. We just need to stitch it to the front end. From the front end flow, we need to make sure that you are able to generate it from what the user says. So what have we not done? When the user clicks on this, we need to trigger that action, right? So when we said try now, we said go to this page. In this page, when the user creates generate image, we are going to say on click, execute a flow. And what is the flow we created? We created a flow called image gen flow. So when the user clicks on this button, it is going to trigger that nice small logic that we wrote in the backend that says call generative AI and take that input 54 that the user gave, which is this, right? So this is called input 54, the input 54 that the user gave, and generate that picture. So now it is doing that. So the picture needs to come here, right? So currently, if you look at it, it's a nice picture, but it is still a static picture. So we want the user's image to come here. So let me give it a title as well, your image here. And let me remove the static picture and make it dynamic. So we want it to come from the backend. So we make it dynamic. We select a flow output, and this flow is called image gen flow, and we use the data from there. We are all done. So we created a page, the home page with a marketing message that says, this is what you can do. If you click try now, it will take you to the page. It shows you what others have done. If you're interested, you can subscribe. And if you go to the next page, we said you can unleash what you do, and if you type something here, your picture will come here, and you can order from here and it will reach home, right? So simplest technology. Hit deploy, your full application is ready. So let's say I am the user. I say, wow, I want to bring the Picasso in me. Let's say I want to try now, and I want to be Zen-like. So let's say So that's the art that I want to create. So let the generative AI digital technology work for you. It goes out, it starts looking at different things, and it creates a beautiful, unique image. So this image is absolutely unique. You can't get it anywhere in the world. So this is created for you. So as a minimum viable product, we said this is what it is. Later, when we said prioritizing needs met, you can add modifications, you can add signatures, you can add swatches, colors, so on and so forth. And the user can say, hey, this is ABC, ship it to my home and hit submit. They will buy the product from you. So you're all set in terms of, we created a nice high fidelity prototype. We added the base needs met criteria of having a generative AI that generates art. And we also had the needs met criteria that this art can be delivered to the user and they can pay for it. So we kind of went out and created a cool little minimum viable product that the user is able to use. So now you have to think in terms of customer feedback. I think, so we spent a lot of time and energy in creating that minimum viable product. And where we all go wrong is we say, man, I created something amazing. That's what I told you before we started. Do not love your solution. Love the customer's problem. There will be many other ways to solve it. So expect the first thing to fail. Like we launched this Me Picasso site in a few minutes. Customer might say, hey, I don't understand, or maybe I wanted to speak and it has to draw, or I wanted to pay online, or something. You may get a lot of feedback. So expect multiple iterations possible. Launch to the smallest segment, right? Because sometimes that's something that we do very wrong also. We get so excited because now with this platform that you have access to, you can launch something, it is available global. So many of us do that mistake that says, hey, I created an MVP, now let me send it to 50,000 people. Then it becomes very difficult for you because 50,000 people say different things because each of them may come from a different persona. So maybe find, maybe the first 100 people from a very clear persona that you have mapped, and then get feedback from them. I think as your first few iterations of product, it is extremely important for you to do that. And with each iteration, measure, saying, is the customer's feedback improving and is the customer succeeding? Because for us, succeeding is customer has to generate more images, customer has to add to delivery for all those images. That means they're successful. So one, of course, the feedback keeps coming in, but then you have to look at the needs met criteria that says how many customers have actually generated and how many have actually placed the order, which will actually give you a good idea of what it is. And at very early stage, it's good for you to have few thousand customers that love the product than maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of visitors who don't understand what your product does. So extremely important for you to kind of scale gradually as you succeed, because in a digital product, it is easy to open out to a lot of people, but opening out a product that does not meet the needs is not a desirable outcome for us, right? The last thing is as you scale. So now let's say we created an amazing minimum viable product. It's good with a few thousand users. Now take the next step of going to the tens of thousands of users or customers who may love this idea. So there we have found digital marketing to kind of, as the product is digital marketing also is amazing. So think about social. Social gives you again, you will find user groups. So for example, you will find art appreciation group in maybe a age segment or in a geographical segment. You can join that group and put a message saying, here is an amazing service or product that I have. You can find some people who are willing to do crowd testing for you also. And most important, you can expect advocates from there. So like we said earlier, if someone says, I generated this meditating Buddha in front of a temple, if someone shares it and says, hey, this is built on Me Picasso, you will get your next 1,000 customers directly. So you can use social media for getting your customers, for getting crowd testing, as well as for word of mouth advertising from your first set of customers. Then also look at other angles. You can look at maybe doing knowledge articles, because in digital marketing, one, of course, you will directly promote your product. You can also indirectly use content. You can write blogs, you can write newsletters to say in 2024 these are the art trends that are there. you can create art using trends like these. You can use YouTube to run a video channel to show, maybe the top 100 arts that's been created on your product. You can show to, users who can get excited to say, how did it do? So you can do a lot of those surrogate content-led marketing as well to scale your product to, next tens and hundreds of thousands of customers. So we looked at, a good concept that says, rapid, very important because our runways as startups are short, and winning with the customer, because if the customer does not win, our product or service does not win. And then we looked at it to say, how do you, use the digital way to create a rapid prototype or what is called as a minimum viable product, where you can actually give it to the customer and make them succeed using OpenWeaver Studio. I would recommend all of you to kind of, create your trial ideas while you go through the course and, take your product to the first 1,000 customers as well as, the next lakhs of customers and win with the customer. So all the very best and talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.